hope you all behaved as you found your seats. I know there's a lot of us in here tonight, but as the daughter of an OSU Beaver, I'm so excited to be here to talk to you about Oregon State. That's what we're here for, right? I figured we either had a lot of misguided Beaver fans or the Beaver fever was strong in the gorge. And I'm so glad you're all here with me tonight. My name's Sarah Fox. I'm the host and curator of Sense of Place. I just realized I need the clicker. Hold on one second. This is technology. Look at that magic. Okay, let's see. Okay, Sense of Place, season 14. We've been at this for 14 years, very proud of them. I have been telling people this is sort of like Sense of Place 3.0, and the reason is because we have added a lot of new things this season, including, in addition to incredible in-person presentations like this one last month with Donella Miller about sturgeon, we are also now doing workshops like this mushroom one, and occasional field trips like going to meet cow number 558 there on a local dairy farm. And there is more of that to come. It was a dream of mine as soon as I took over the program to do stuff. Oh, I'm so glad it's a dream of yours too. I wanted to take Sense of Place into the field, and that's starting to happen. And so stay tuned. If you're not on our newsletter, it's a really good way to make sure you don't miss what we're up to, and you also don't miss tickets because we do sell out. Another thing that's really big is this crazy scene which is going on right up here in our AV room. We are very fortunate to have partnered with the Columbia Center for the Arts to receive a grant from the Oregon Cultural Trust. So they looked at what we're doing and said, we think what you're doing is valuable enough that we're going to support you in getting live stream equipment to help us make the live stream more sustainable, because I know that there are times when you can't come because you're sick, or it's late past your bedtime, or you don't want to drive in the dark, or whatever, or it's sold out. And so the live stream is a very important piece, and I like to say it was CCA plus SOP plus OCT, Oregon Cultural Trust, plus JOE, which is Joe. And I will tell you, we are a very small and mighty crew. I've worked in TV. This is essentially a live TV show we're producing tonight with not a live TV show crew or budget. So bear with us, have patience. It's really important to me that we do it. Thank you, guys. Part of the reason it's so important to me is because I know that there are people tuning in, like Henry and Thatcher, who have been talking to me about tonight's presentation from the moment I announced the season. The reason being because they and their Beaver correspondents here, who I can tell you we have Dougie, Schlapp, Douglas, Montello, Geronimo, and Beaver. They are tuning in. Hello, Henry and Thatcher. Thank you for watching and getting excited about Beavers with us. Henry and Thatcher are just two examples of why the live stream and our online archive are so important. What we record here tonight will go on to our archive and be available to anyone, anywhere, at any time, into perpetuity. And I can tell you what that means is that the stories that get shared here will eventually be heard by thousands, as we've seen with some of our past stories. And I think that's great because folks like Margaret and Jeanette are amazing and have incredible, unique knowledge that I want to go as far and wide as possible. So that is our live stream. And the reason we can do it is because we have the most incredible sponsors. I know some of you are here tonight, some of you are tuning in. We've had some sponsors for the duration of all 14 years, and people come in at all different levels. We have nonprofits that support us. We have businesses that support us. We have individuals that support us. All of you that are here tonight who bought tickets, those of you tuning in who are able to donate, all of that helps make all of this work. And so I hope that you all feel a part of the Sense of Place community, because for me that is the most fun part about it all. The other fun part is that we are part of a nonprofit, Mount Adams Institute, that has a shared value of how do we connect people to nature. And sometimes it's getting out in nature, but sometimes it's being at an event like this where you're learning about something that's going to change the way you see the world when you go back out again. And Mount Institute has been a great partner of ours, and when I go to them and say we want to do a lecture on a large rodent, they don't pause. So it's a good partner. I'm really like hot and dry. I'm sorry, I can't talk right now, and I'm trying to not get sick, so I have to get a little drink of water, which I apologize because we have so much we want to get through tonight. So, all right, I feel like those stand-up comedians who do that right when they're about to deliver a really good punchline, but I don't have a punchline right now, so I'm sorry. Okay, so Mount Institute is our partner. They are fantastic. The largest rodent, which is what we're here to talk about tonight, you guys. You are here spending valuable time to learn about a rodent, okay? So many years ago, and like I said, in another life, I worked in TV, and I got hired to do a job about producing a documentary about river restoration. I married a hydrologist, and so people think that I know how to restore rivers, but I only know for like 5 minutes, and then I'm done. And so and usually the job's like, we're gonna come here, and we're gonna take this big heavy equipment, we're gonna put large woody debris in rivers, and we're gonna move boulders, and it's amazing what they do. But I had this project come to me, and they said, we need you to produce this film, and all these smart scientists are working with beavers to restore a river. I was like, what? That seems a little difficult, guys. Are they on the payroll? Like, how does this work? And so that was maybe a decade ago, and that was when I first learned that this was something that was going on, is that instead of just trying to coexist with animals or live with them in our backyard, we were actually looking to partner with them. And that really blew my mind. And so tonight I'm very excited to have Margaret Newman, who's the executive director of the Mid-Columbia Fisheries, and Jeanette Burkhart, who's a watershed planner for Yakima Nation, here to tell you about this incredible creature. And it connects us to this place. It connects us to history, both here in this country, but also worldwide. And I think what we're gonna learn tonight is it's also gonna connect us to what our future looks like. Both Jeanette and Margaret are part of the Wish Push group, which you're gonna learn more about tonight. I know many others from the Wish Push group are here tonight. And we have a lot that we want to get through, including, because it is November and a time to give thanks, a little surprise that I got for all of you. You get a beaver. You get a beaver. And you get a beaver. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to get you guys beavers, but that would have been really fun. There's a surprise at the very end. So the way it will work, Jeanette and Margaret are come join us. They're going to give their presentation. We're going to have some time for a Q&A. And then the surprise comes if you behave yourselves. Okay? I see you guys. So with that, I think I've covered all my bases. Please help me welcome Margaret Newman and Jeanette Burkhart to Sense of Place Season 14. I'll trade you. Oh, I'll take this. I'll take that. Don't make Joe mad. No, you're good, you're good.
Wow, this is quite a crowd. Thank you very much. Good evening. Thanks to Sarah and Mount Institute and all the wonderful folks who are organizing and supporting this delightful lecture series, which I've certainly learned a lot from in the past. We're super excited to be here in the Beaver State this evening to talk about a most powerful and remarkable animal and its works. We'd like to also recognize that it's Native American Heritage Month and to acknowledge that we are on the lands, the traditional lands of the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs, who with their ancestors have stewarded these lands for thousands of years. The American beaver is lumberjack, farmer, architect, builder, irrigator, firefighter, and most importantly, ecosystem engineer. The beaver is second only to humans in its ability to shape its environment, and after nearly being driven to extinction, the beaver's comeback is one of the great conservation stories of the 20th century. Our landscapes began to unravel when beaver were removed. Can they help us restore our watersheds in the face of tough environmental issues? We can learn so much from beavers and partner with them to chomp on some of our stickiest environmental challenges.
So we are going to, can you guys hear me? All right. We're going to talk about this cool, charismatic, interesting animal and how beavers improve streams for fish and wildlife and people. And before we can really dig in to understand that topic, we need to just think for a minute about what a healthy stream looks like and what it is. And when we do that, it's pretty easy, I guess, to recognize what a healthy stream isn't. Maybe that's the easier thing to do. So on the left there is a picture of Lower Snyder Creek on in the town of Klickitat at the old mill site. And we can tell that's not a healthy stream. We call that stream in a straitjacket. It can't move, it has concrete banks, and it lacks pretty much everything that animals and fish need for habitat. The stream on the right, we call that Detroit riprap. So neither of these would qualify as a healthy stream. Here's some other streams that don't look that healthy. So a healthy stream should have fish passage, which the one on the left does not, and clean water, and and room to move, I guess. So the one on the right is problematic for the homeowner for sure, and also lacks a lot of habitat. We see a lot of headwater streams in our upper parts of our watersheds that look like these, especially in eastern Oregon and eastern Washington and central Oregon and Washington. This is not a natural condition for these streams. They're deeply downcut. And they're disconnected, right? The stream is way down there instead of being up at the level of the rest of its floodplain of the ground. So in a natural condition before beavers were removed, these streams would have been, or these systems would have been beaver-dominated wetlands. The whole valley would have gotten wet often and would have had a lot of beaver ponds. Would have water would have been out on that floodplain, so the groundwater would have recharged, and those headwaters function like big sponges. When beavers were removed from the landscape, these kind of systems unraveled, and the streams became downcut and disconnected from their floodplains, and actually became a lot drier, so that sponge effect was lost, and the water just zooms out, gets real flashy. The floods come and go quickly instead of the water getting held, so then the streams are drier. That picture on the left is Simmons Creek. It's a tributary in the Klickitat. It's since been restored, so it's looking better. This stream looks a little bit better to me, and just in general, it has nice native riparian vegetation, native trees and plants, but it also lacks structure or wood. It doesn't have any pools. It's just like one big long riffle, so there's not a lot of habitat diversity there. Healthy streams are often messy with lots of down wood, and that makes pools and hiding places for fish, creates things for insects to eat. Healthy streams have side channels and complexity, and that wood can scour pools and sort and hold gravels. This one is really messy, and it's also really cool. In our mind's eye, we don't think of this as a healthy looking stream, but this is a pretty cool stream. I mean, you can see the water, right? So beaver have worked over this stream. This is Bear Creek in Klickitat County, and it's a healthy stream. Here's another stream that's full of wood, and that's great for fish. Our streams have changed so much from their natural condition that we have a different image or vision of what a healthy stream is. So there's like learning we all have to do. I have this nice cartoon of a stream with wood, and you don't have to read all those tiny words, but you can just get the idea of what that wood does in there to create habitat. So healthy streams are messy, and they're complex, and they're loaded with wood. Okay, so now we're ready to talk more about beavers. Why do beavers matter? Well, you guys must care because you came out tonight, and that's super cool. So we all know in the Beaver State that beavers make dams, and these little dams hold beaver ponds. And those are ponds and wetlands are really important for stream hydrology. In these ponds, water stays cool, it soaks into the groundwater, so it recharges the groundwater. And these ponds sort of create that sponge effect that I was talking about earlier. They hold water, and they catch water in the winter, they hold it in the groundwater, they release it slowly in the summer. So this is super important in dry climates like ours. And that slow release of water can help keep the streams flowing longer throughout the year. So a lot of our streams, we call them flow limited, which is exactly what it is, right? They're just really low in the summer, late summer and fall. So water storage, that's one way that beavers are important. So this is a pretty cool big beaver dam. You can see the extent of water storage that's going on there that can keep those streams perennial and do a lot of good buffering. So that creates resiliency in times of drought as well, and kind of forms another reservoir almost, right? When we have less snowpack during climate change, holding water is even more important. Another reason that beavers matter is that beaver dams clean and filter water. So water quality. So the ponds, the water sitting in there, pollutants and sediment filter out and are kind of stored down there in the soil on the bottom. And carbon is stored down there as well. And the longest known beaver dam is a half-mile long. It's in Alberta, and it's visible from space. And it's been around since at least 1970. So here's a dam that's cool, complex, connected, the stream. So that beaver dam, you're going to have to just follow with your eye. It starts down there by that log, and it goes all the way around. And then can you see the person for scale? And then it kind of keeps on going. I think it has a couple more branches. So kind of cool. They're more complex than we think of just that straight dam. Beaver ponds can be messy. Why do beavers matter? Because they're a keystone species. They create habitat for other species. Our friends at the Mount Adams Resource Stewards, they found a beaver pond on their property, and they put up a trail cam. And in just a few months, this is what they found on their trail cam. So lots of critters. That one on the left there, that dark blob, is an otter leaping. So wild waterfowl, elk, otter, beavers, of course, in the beaver pond. 80% of wildlife in Washington uses beaver-created or enhanced habitats. Beaver ponds are also important in, they provide habitat for species that are listed under the Endangered Species Act. So like sandhill cranes and Oregon spotted frog and salmon, steelhead, western pond turtles. So a lot of really cool species that we want to keep around use beaver ponds. I think this is where I have a video, and we'll see if it plays. My colleague William Meyer in Central Washington took this video, and we might not get to see it. I don't know, Joe, if you can make it go, but if it goes, it goes. He pans down underwater, and you can actually see salmon rearing in the pond with beavers. And some people worry about beavers, like, do beaver dams block fish? And that maybe happens very rarely, but in general, fish and beavers co-evolved, and people say beavers taught fish how to jump. So if you watch, you got to watch really closely to see the fish, so wait for him to pan down there. Hey, good job, Joe. Oh, this is the longer version. Okay, you're going to have to wait patiently. There's about 30 seconds here. We had a little technical difficulty, but we tried to crop the 30-second wait out. But shortly, he will pan down. You can see that fish. What's cool is how comfortably he's chilling in his pond. He looks great. Okay, there's the fish over on the side. Do you see him? He's so chill. We call beavers semi-aquatic. I also think it's kind of cool how close he got to that beaver. So there they are, keystone species, why they matter. One more reason why they matter, it's important to all of us too, wildfire resilience. So in the last 10, 20 years, as we've had these big, scary landscape scale fires, scientists have learned that beaver dams and beaver complex areas don't always burn. Of course, water does not burn. So these areas can create a refuge for animals, for birds, for even livestock during the fire. And they can also, after the fire, a lot of times there's a lot of weird runoff because there's no plants to filter things. So the beaver complexes can filter some of that runoff after the fire. So we have another video that I hope will play. So Emily Fairfax is here she goes. This is her thing. So Emily Fairfax is a beaver researcher, and she coined the term Smokey the Beaver because of everything we're learning about beavers and wildfire resilience. So these areas, these beaver complexes, can kind of jumpstart recovery after a wildfire. They're a place that hasn't burned, so they're a seed source, and then, like I said, they can filter things that are running off from the landscape. This area here is just north of Goldendale. This is Shenandoah Creek, and beavers colonized this creek after the fire, which is kind of interesting. And now that creek is flowing year-round thanks to that extra water that the beavers are holding. So Jeanette, what did the beaver say when it saw the wildfire? Hot damn. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about how cool beavers are and some fun facts about them and their biology. Here they are. They are the largest rodent in North America. You are in the Beaver State. They're the second largest rodent in the world. They can get to be 60 to 80 pounds and 10 years old. And yes, they are vegetarians. So a lot of people think they eat fish, but they don't. They eat all kinds of plants. They love aspen and willows and cottonwoods, and they have those amazing teeth. The front part of their teeth has iron in it to help them chew on trees. So, and then the soft part, the back part is different, and so it's softer, and so when they chew, they're like naturally sharpening their teeth. Beavers make dams, we knew that, but why? They want deep water to protect themselves. They're pretty awkward on land, but they're great in water. And so the dams are a place for them to be safe from predators because they are a prey species. Everything eats them. So that the dams provide them protection, and they'll even kind of forage out and make like little canals off their dams so they can go get their food while they're staying underwater. They have a couple of different kinds of houses that they live in. They live in, I'm not on the house slide. Here we go. Here's their houses. Lodges, so there's lodges on the left and at the bottom. And then also they live in bank dens. And beavers prefer to live in like small and medium-sized streams. But we see them in a variety of habitats and lots of surprising places. We see them a lot on the Columbia, on the like backwater pools of the Columbia. And this isn't their like ideal spot. They can't build dams on a big river, but we think perhaps that human activity has kind of pushed them out of some of their best ideal habitats, and they're living where they can. Beavers have small families. They have 2 to 3 kits a year, and the kits live with their parents for 2 years. So when they're babies, they're learning how to be beavers. And then when they're teenagers, so 1-year-olds, they're helping with the next year's kits. And then they disperse at age 2, or they stick around and they learn some interning on their building trade. By year 3, they're off. They disperse around 2. They're off with their own families at year 3. They like to live in colonies. They're very social. Their colonies are like 4 to 10 beavers, and they're territorial, and they mate for life. Okay, so we have maybe some kids are young at heart here. Beavers have so many cool adaptations. So they are semi-aquatic, so they have 2 sets of eyelids, 2 sets of eyelids, 2 sets of lips, and they can close their ears and nose so they can be underwater for up to 15 minutes, which I think is just amazing. And they have a wonderful tail that they can slap on the water to warn other beavers, and it's kind of a fat storage for winter and also like an air conditioner for summer, and they can use it as a kickstand when they're up on their hind legs. So, and you can see how great they are in water, and just they're kind of lumbering on the land. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Jeanette to talk about beavers past and present. Oh, I'll be back. Don't clap for me. We're going to trade off here.
Yeah. We'll be bouncing back and forth a little bit, so. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about where beavers used to be and maybe should be. So before the European colonization of the Americas, American beaver were distributed from the Arctic tundra all the way down to the deserts of northern Mexico. They likely inhabited every small to medium stream in their range, and we don't know their current numbers because there hasn't really been a population survey that's been done scientifically into the American beaver population. So our best guess is that there are about 10 to 15 million of them, and that's down from a pre-settlement estimate of 400 million beavers. So, I mean, as you can tell from that map, they were everywhere, right? And they had a massive impact on the continent. It was, before European settlement, it was a much wetter, greener place than today. So I want to take a little shallow dive with you into the recent history of beavers and their human cousins and how they interacted. Many North American indigenous cultures revere the beaver as sacred for retaining water and shaping landscapes. Beavers have been sustainably hunted and trapped for food, tools, and clothing for thousands of years. The indigenous understanding of beaver ecology is sophisticated, and Western science is only just starting to catch up. By the early 1600s, Europeans had nearly wiped out their native fur bearers and were looking east for a new fur frontier. Starting in the 1500s, European traders worked with Native American hunters and trappers on the East Coast to expand their access to and provide a steady supply of beaver pelts to the exploding international fur market. They relied on the superior ecological savvy and hunting and trapping skills of these native trappers. There were violent conflicts over control of this lucrative fur trade that that are known as, we know it as the French and Indian War, but it was also known as the Beaver Wars. The ravages of the fur trade altered American watersheds and caused localized extinction of beavers as far back as the late 1600s. And this, in turn, paved the way for looking westward, colonization and fueling westward expansion, which disrupted indigenous economies and lifeways. What was all the fuss or furs about? What doomed the beaver is its dense, warm, and highly waterproof fur, which, once it's felted, made great hats for humans from China to Europe to the US. Trapping in Western North America nearly wiped beavers out, creating a fur desert by the mid-1800s. In the end, only a change in fashion may have saved the beaver from total extinction. But its homelands and waters unraveled when beavers were removed on this massive scale, worsened by other land conversion and development. Beavers were also harvested for castoreum, which is from a scent gland that helps individuals identify each other and mark their territory. It's been used for 2,000 years as a traditional medicine, flavoring agent for food and tobacco products, and as a perfume ingredient. Interestingly, it contains salicylic acid, which may sound familiar because it's the active ingredient or common, what makes aspirin work. So it makes sense that it was used as a traditional medicine. And it comes from the willows that beavers consume. Beavers are still trapped today recreationally, but there's less commercial trapping nowadays, and the price of beaver pelts has gone down considerably. Beavers have been nearly absent from our landscape for so long that we have developed ecological amnesia for what an intact, highly functioning watershed actually looks like, some of which Margaret was talking about earlier. Lewis Henry Morgan, railroad director and beaver enthusiast, carefully studied and mapped these beaver dams on the map there that he observed in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan over years in the mid-1800s. This area was still very undeveloped, and beavers were allowed to basically do their thing and run amok there. You'll see there's sort of a string of beaver ponds in the center there that are really interesting. Recently, researchers have been able to relocate many of these same dams, indicating how durable these features can be on the landscape if maintained by beavers. Some research suggests that successive generations of beavers can maintain dams for a millennium or longer. Researchers radiocarbon dated recently exposed beaver dams in a California study, and the date of the top layer was around 1850. In the middle, it was about 1730, and the bottom layer was around 580. The youngest date corresponds to when the area was developed for agriculture and became consumed by the California fur rush and later the gold rush. Where beavers are allowed to persist, their landscape alterations may endure for centuries. In the upper left corner, might be a little bit difficult to make out, but that is a picture of a beaver dam that was unearthed in the Yukon in recent years, and it was dated to 125,000 years ago. And the interesting little white chunk in the middle is a now extinct, I believe it was mammoth bone, that they just used as building material back then. So the results of the de-beavering of our watersheds is that the habitat has become simplified, we have less biodiversity, the channels have become downcut, there's loss of that floodplain connectivity that Margaret was talking about, and loss of woody structure. And we have higher peaks of flow and lower low flows these days, and without the ability of those floodplains and beaver complexes to buffer those flashier flows, that all propagates downstream. So in the summer, we have drier sections of stream or streams that go dry altogether. Lower flows also oftentimes mean warmer stream temperatures, which are bad for a lot of our native fish. Former wet meadows and floodplains fed by overbank flows that beavers helped encourage are drying out. No beaver dams also means lower nutrient uptake from material that's moving into the stream system. More sedimentation, more erosion, and a changed and simplified food web. In short, a shifting baseline. Degraded watersheds are less resilient to disturbance and take longer to recover. To match the scale of the degradation that has happened, restoration needs to be massively scaled up. Beaver restoration may seem trendy, but it really isn't new. These documents, the large ones there on the screen, are from 1938 in the Columbia National Forest, which is now called the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. And they show existing beaver locations and sites to which beavers were translocated. And the spreadsheet on the left details how many and where the beavers had been moved to and how they fared. Beaver dam mimicry as a restoration tool has also been practiced for at least decades, if not longer, in one form or another. There was a recognition that beaver populations were in trouble as early as the late 1800s in Oregon, and the first legal protections were put in place, with a 20-year trapping closure to let populations recover. And then trapping seasons were opened and closed, and kill permits issued over the years as human beaver conflicts and populations of beavers fluctuated. But thanks to a burgeoning conservation movement and public education about the value of beavers, a beaver translocation program in Oregon was started in 1932. Voices like those of William Lovell Finley, who you see in the upper right-hand corner picture, who is a public official, biologist, photographer, conservationist, advocated for beaver relocation. He praised the Oregon program, where beavers not tolerated by agriculturalists in the lowlands were translocated to headwaters of drier forested streams in national forests in Northeast Oregon. He praised the beavers' many ecological benefits and referred to trapping as killing the goose that laid the golden egg. State and federal agencies encouraged tolerance for beavers by touting their ecological benefits, likely inspired by the lessons of the Dust Bowl and drying watersheds. By the late 1930s, programs to translocate beavers were instated in several states across the U.S., thanks in part to the development of a workable live trap and federal support. In the lower picture in the center there is a picture from the state of Idaho, where they actually relocated beavers by parachuting them out of planes. This was in 1948, and they designed crates that would open on impact and let the beavers out. And this was actually a relatively successful program at the time. They were released into the wilderness. So tolerance of beavers between the 1940s and the 2000s waned, and lethal removal increased, perhaps due to increasing conflicts with agricultural and residential development and industrialization and urbanization. So in the intervening decades, increased human populations, the ESA listing of salmon and steelhead populations, droughts, megafires, climate change, all of these have led to a resurgence in interest in beavers as a restoration agent. You may have heard there was a big project to put in beaver dam analogs, so beaver mimicry devices on a pretty big scale in Bridge Creek, Oregon. And this was studied over years to see if it was effective in helping steelhead populations there. Beavers moved in, expanded on it, and they have gotten some really great data out of that, which has helped to inform a lot of policy and restoration actions. It's really compelling results. It's also helped fuel advocacy and some threats of legal action against state and federal fish and wildlife agencies in Oregon and Washington due to the impacts of lethal beaver removal on listed salmon species has really helped refocus efforts from lethal removal of beavers to live trapping and relocation where possible, and implementing coexistence approaches. The West still has a patchwork of a lot of different regulations for beaver management, for mitigation, for lethal removal, for restoration, but they're all evolving in response to outcomes from scientific research and the need that we're experiencing of fresh approaches to land and natural resource management, fueled in part by climate crises. A quick recap of the rules in the Northwest. So in Washington, by some considered one of the most progressive states in terms of beaver-related policy, beaver are managed by the State Department of Fish and Wildlife primarily as fur-bearing game and nuisance species, but there is an incomplete understanding of their populations. We really don't know how many beavers are in the state, and they have been functionally extinct in parts of Washington for quite a while. There's been no population study, and as I mentioned, neither on the whole of the North American continent either, despite their critical role for watershed function and the fact that they were nearly extirpated. Washington has had a beaver relocation program statewide since 2017, so that puts it ahead of a lot of its neighbors, but it also has no law currently limiting lethal removal for conflicts. So a private landowner can remove beavers lethally and never has to report it, doesn't have to report how many. It's kind of some ambivalence shown there on the policy end of things. We have no state beaver management plan, and there's no protection for beavers that are released as part of a restoration project. And we know of cases where relocations have been carried out and the beavers have been trapped. In Oregon, a Beaver Believers bill was signed this summer into law, and we have some information about that outside on the table. It protects beavers in order to mitigate climate change effects, and it reclassified beavers from predatory to fur bearer. So a predatory animal, I'm not exactly sure how that works when they're a vegetarian, but anyway. And it ends unlimited year-round lethal take of beavers on private lands. It also promotes non-lethal removal where conflicts occur. There was also a bill to prohibit the removal of beavers on federally managed public land in Oregon that was introduced but didn't gain any steam, so it may come back around. Beavers may be relocated with a permit from the State Department of Fish and Wildlife. So it seems that the Beaver State is becoming more beaver friendly. Yay. It's not all about fur anymore. California has really had one of the most stunning policy pivots in the last few years. Beavers were only recently reclassified from a non-native pest to a keystone species. How's that for an upgrade? In part because of tireless advocacy by beaver believers, compelling scientific research, and several years of, as I'm sure you've heard, brutal drought and wildfires in the state. Fur trapping is illegal in California, but it is permitted for depredation, so that's for beaver damage, and their kill permits are not counted and the number is not disclosed. So it's not sure how many disappear that way. There are also two pilot beaver relocation programs that will be carried out by California tribes in the next few years, so that's exciting. Idaho issues kill permits and requires a report for nuisance situations, but it also does translocations of beavers. Utah has a state beaver management plan, and it relocates about 60 to 100 beavers a year, so mostly in the north and northeast. There's federal legislation that was introduced that would establish a 5-year pilot program nationwide that encourages non-lethal approaches to human beaver conflicts. That's working its way through the system. So state regulations around coexistence and flow control devices are often burdensome and not in sync with best available science, but they're moving slowly forward. And there's an attempt to streamline permitting processes for beaver-based restoration, even though it's highly variable among states and it can be very lengthy and complicated and stifle innovation, which we desperately need right now, but some attempts are being made to move things forward on that front too. Tribes, as sovereign nations, have their own rules and regulations around beaver trapping and restoration on reservation lands, but sometimes there is friction with state wildlife agencies over jurisdiction on ceded, usual and accustomed and traditional territories, some of which is now public lands. Tribes such as the Tulalip, the Cowlitz, and the Yakima have been translocating beavers for years.
Okay, so not to paint a completely rosy picture, no, there's a lot of good momentum and new information that points to all the good that beavers can do in watersheds and headwaters. But that doesn't mean we can just like snap our fingers and everything is going to go back to beavers' perfect role in the ecosystem. There are a lot of challenges, and challenges with beavers and humans in conflict, and it's also hard to boost beaver populations from the low area level that they are now. Beavers are busy and industrious, and they really don't like the sound of running water. They want to build that pool for their own safety. So when they meet irrigation infrastructure or culverts that in a place they want to live, you often get this sort of situation. So there's also like really a range of tolerance for beavers. I have talked to a lot of people over many years about beavers, and some people just love them and some people can't stand them. So there are solutions to these kind of culvert problems. There are pond leveling devices that I'll talk about in a little bit. And then trapping, but that is kind of a short-term solution to a long-term problem, because when you've got a place where a beaver wants to live, even if you trap that beaver, other beavers may show up. People are often frustrated by beavers cutting trees that we want. So in this photo, this is an orchard in our local area that's very close to one of our local rivers. And last winter, one or more beavers cut down about 300 of these very nice orchard trees. So the damage can be really significant and serious. I really love this book, Eager, by Ben Goldfarb, and I think it's here. He's brilliant, and he wrote up this like really cool description that I'm just going to read you because I can't say it better than this. So he says, beavers are among our closest ecological and technological kin. Homo sapiens and Castor canadensis, that's the beaver, Latin name for beaver, are both wildly creative tool users who settle near water, share a fondness for elaborate infrastructure, and favor fertile valley bottoms carved by low gradient rivers. And while all organisms have evolved to fill niches provided by nature, neither beaver nor people are content to leave it at that. Instead, we're proactive, relentlessly driven to rearrange our environments to maximize its provision of food and shelter. If humans are the world's most influential mammals, beavers have a fair chance at second place. So I love this picture of this beaver chomping on the wood here on this tree. Jeanette, what did the beaver say when it met the tree? It's been nice knowing you. All joking aside, beaver damage can be serious and expensive. So with the new science and the new rules and ongoing, conflicts in our area, we decided, several of us locally decided that we would try to figure out what action we could take locally to encourage beavers, learn more about beavers. So of course, what did we do? We formed a committee. And our committee is called the Whoosh Push Working Group, and we are named after the beaver of Yakima legends. And the committee includes many agencies and local entities, and we have kind of a core team, which is the group I work for, Mid-Columbia Fisheries, Yakima Nation, who Jeanette works for, Underwood Conservation District, who is here in multiple ways, raise your hand, and the Mount Adams Resource Stewards, who might be here. Yes, they are here. So we started by learning as much as we can about beavers in our area, what's going on. And when I say our area, we are working south of Mount Adams in Washington State. So these watersheds, the Wind, the White Salmon, the Klickitat, and the watersheds in eastern Klickitat County is where we focus. And we came up with a little tagline or a mission that is retain, restore, and rehome. And Jeanette's going to tell you about what we learned. Or are learning.
Are learning. The more we learn, the more questions we have. So beavers are starting to reoccupy their historic habitats, albeit slowly, and are drawn to those lower elevation, more urbanized areas where there are fewer predators and there are available resources. There are many more beavers in the main stem rivers than we had expected, and fewer in the headwater streams where we would have expected them to be. They are resourceful and adaptable, and populations still appear to be depressed and many suitable and historic habitats still unoccupied. We don't know on the beaver populations what is impacting them. Is it, to what extent does lethal removal on private lands have an impact on their population? Or commercial or recreational trapping, or predation, or perhaps there's another source of mortality for beavers that is beyond that. Maybe there are diseases or other things going on that we're not aware of. And then we're also curious about the occupancy of habitats. Why aren't they where we would expect them to be? Why aren't they in habitats that look perfectly suitable for us to imagine beavers wanting to be in? Is drought keeping beavers out of habitats because there isn't water availability? They can't create water. It has to come. It has to be delivered. So maybe drought is affecting the suitability of those habitats, or maybe those habitats are drying out because beavers aren't there. So we do know they are wild animals and that they're unpredictable and that they're highly mobile.
So our little group is focused on retain, restore, and rehome. So retain is just, the idea is helping landowners mitigate the damage from beavers so that beavers can stay. They can be retained in their spot where they're happy living. So wrapping trees, protecting trees, and also education like this. So maybe people are more tolerant of beavers. We learned about these kind of devices that you can use to protect culverts and limit like beavers from blocking them up. we had a training with lots of folks to learn how to install these devices called beaver deceivers or pond levelers that they kind of hide the sound of running water so water can pass through and you can keep a pond at a certain level. And these are great for like blocked culverts. And they work pretty good, and the designs can be tailored for the each place where you're installing them. And then we're moved to restore.
So there's something called beaver-based restoration, believe it or not, or it's also known as low-tech process-based restoration. And this is an approach that uses simple hand tools and natural materials to restore natural watershed functions to degraded streams and riverscapes. And it basically imitates what beavers do. And we hope that we can create the conditions that cause the habitat to be suitable for beavers, that they'll come in. They're way cheaper and more efficient at making these things than we are. So ideally, they will move in. They will improve on what we have done. And it's a way of letting the river do the work, or as some of the practitioners say, get out of the way and let the rodent do the work. So it nudges those natural processes and lets them take over. It involves adaptive management and some humility. Implementation is less heavy-handed than what Sarah was talking about at the beginning with the big yellow machines moving earth around. It relies on letting nature take over, essentially. It does require a thorough understanding of the site and the watershed processes that are at work there. It still requires permitting and a lot, well, I wouldn't say a lot. There are some regulatory agencies that are still not quite comfortable with this approach because there's a lot of uncertainty to it, and it requires iteration. So you have to come back, you have to adaptively manage and see where you need to improve on things. So on the right-hand side is a picture of a recently completed sort of first phase of Blockhouse Creek Riverscape Restoration Project. It's on private land in the Klickitat Basin. And what you're looking at there is what's called a post-assisted log structure. That's a fancy name for a fake beaver dam. And some plantings. And the idea is that you are taking native materials from the area, locally sourced, and you're basically adding structure back into structurally starved streams. And there's not just one of these, there are many of these structures, and each one of them backs up water, spreads it out, tries to reconnect it to the floodplain, grow more food. Eventually there will be deep enough water and enough food that beavers will come back. They'll work on these things, they'll extend it, they'll grow it bigger. So it's a longer term investment, but this is just the sort of spark that kicks off those processes and gets the ball rolling. And it can be scaled up. These structures are there for redundancy too. So if you have like high winter flows, one dam would blow out. 60, less likely to blow out. Beaver-based restoration complements forest health and wildfire fuel reduction efforts too. So on the right-hand side, you see a Mount Adams Resource Steward Sawyer thinning an overtopped oak forest on Swale Creek, taking out the encroaching conifers. And those conifers were then used in a low-tech restoration project in adjacent Swale Creek on some private land, where we put in a bunch of more of these beaver dam analogs and post-assisted log structures. So the same kind of principle, but we're actually also helping the forest in the process and then using that material to do our restoration project. On the left is a beaver dam analog that we built on a different restoration project last year. And just last week, it got a fresh dressing of greens and got built up a little bit because we realized, yeah, it's doing good, but it could actually be built higher. These things are all made out of organic material, so they are going to break down and squish after a while too. So that one got a little facelift. This is an aerial view of that same area. This is Teepee Creek on reservation in the Klickitat. This is a low-tech process-based restoration project. It's year 2. Last year we workshopped it with a bunch of folks. We were all kind of learning together with some professionals that knew how to do this work. But these projects, again, are iterative, require adaptive management. But you can see that what went from being a very down-cut, simple stream is now really starting to re-engage the floodplain. The water's spreading out. There's a lot of mess. There's a lot of wood in the creek there. And this is all the kind of thing that beavers would do if they're there, and we hope they come back. So we're going to be treating 8 miles of stream in this manner on this stream. And this is just a quick example of a BDA on a stream, a beaver dam analog. And you'll notice that the time frame is super short. So on the far, what is it? I guess it'd be your left. Was before the Beaver Dam analog was put in. The middle 2021, the Beaver Dam analog was built, and the beavers had already moved in by 22. And you can see how much more, I mean, really notice the extent of the wetted area. The beavers have really built it up and spread it out even more. So that's what we want.
Okay, the last one, rehome. So this should be a last resort, right? There are situations where it becomes necessary or preferred to move a beaver. And what we start with is trying to assess the habitat. There's some pretty cool scientific models out there that we can use on a landscape scale to look at where beavers should be, how they, where they might be have done well in the past. So starting with that, then ground truthing, and identifying suitable release sites where there aren't already beavers, which we found very few beavers up high in the watershed. So, but suitable release sites need enough water, so that's a challenge. And of course, they need a willing landowner. And we're working in Washington, so we're following all the rules of Washington's pilot project for beaver relocation. And that involves, one of the rules is we had to build a holding facility so that we could trap. If we trap, we're going to trap the whole family and move them together, or at least a pair, move them together, because beavers are social and it's not going to work if you just move one. So we are all set up to do the rehoming or relocation. The picture on the right is what one of those holding facilities looks like, and the picture on the top left is what a live beaver trap looks like, and just how they get used. This is a picture of a relocation in central Washington that was part of the Yakima Basin Beaver program. And yep, just how they do it. I'm going to say it's not as easy as it looks. Beavers are wily and smart and hard to trap.
Okay. Beavers are, as you may have noticed, having a pretty well-deserved moment in the spotlight. At the moment, on both the national and international stage, there is a lot of excitement in the media about them, particularly in regards to their ability to mitigate for climate change impacts like droughts and wildfires, and flooding, actually. And the fact that they're charismatic megafauna doesn't hurt, I think. But there are many people and organizations working on this issue at different levels, and here are some of the ways that we are trying to help move the needle locally. We're trying to learn from each other, so we have lots of peer-to-peer learning and skill-building trainings. We try to share best practices. We've gotten a ton of mentoring from the Methow Beaver Project, from the Tulalip Beaver Project, from Beavers Northwest, and other groups in the Northwest working on beaver coexistence, restoration, and translocation. There is a state beaver working group, and there are lots of smaller working groups. There are also national conferences like BeaverCon that happens every year. And actually a conference, the State of the Beaver Conference, just ended in Canyonville, Oregon today. So lots of people talking and sharing information and skills. There are also some great resources that have become available, like Planning for Beavers Manual, Best Management Practices, Beaver Restoration Guidebooks, that kind of thing. There's a lot of scientific and social research going on around beavers and beaver restoration, and traditional ecological knowledge is really helping inform a lot of practices. We're working together, so tribes, agencies, other organizations, landowners and land managers, schools, volunteers, across all sorts of geographies and scales, and we're trying to make sure that diverse perspectives are included and that we learn from each other. Telling the story is always really important, so that involves education outreach like tonight, but also working with youth. In that lower left-hand corner, that was last week, actually, I was able to get out at one of our restoration projects with a group of Goldendale Middle School students, and they were actually building beaver dam analogs and live stake planting, and that kind of thing is invaluable. Yeah, thanks. And getting other beaver believers to really evangelize is key. So that passion and commitment that people have to beavers and beaver restoration is really compelling and infectious. And some of those beaver believers happen to be landowners, so this is a really good thing. And we are planning for a beaverful future. So we're trying to make sure that beavers are included in local and regional plans, especially related to water and climate change. For example, the Gorge Climate Action Plan for the Gorge Scenic Area includes a lot about beavers, and we're working on the Northwest Forest Plan update right now. So hopefully we can look forward to beavers being on people's minds and out there on the landscape more in the future, and looking for opportunities to partner with that beaver power. So we're working towards a more beaverful future and are really thankful that you all came tonight and heard us out. So thank you.
This is your chance. There we go. For Q&A, we're going to do a quick formal Q&A. Thank you, Joe. And there will be more time afterwards for questions, but I want to make sure there's time for the surprise. So, yes, sir. Go for it.
Besides humans, what are the predators?
That's a great question. I think basically anything that can fit a beaver in its mouth. So wolves, coyotes, bears, cougars, bobcats. Am I forgetting anything? Foxes. Yeah, any of our carnivorous predators out there will take down a beaver. And also remember, the kits are, while the parents are protecting them, they're fine, but the kits are really like little milk duds out there. And so I wouldn't be surprised if a few haven't been picked off by a golden eagle or something. I think that's entirely possible. Kits are pretty vulnerable too. So
We're over here.
So regarding reintegrating them into population centers, going back to that slide of the unfortunate orchard, if there is adequate native plants between them and the orchard, is it reasonable to assume that they wouldn't venture that far?
Give them the appetizer is what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah,
I like that.
that's such a good question. They're wild and unpredictable, and it's hard to know, but that orchard is very, very close to the river. So they don't want to venture out around on land. They want to eat right by the river. So giving the river a little room is good in lots of ways.
Is there something that really attracts them from building or eating, like a tree or a plant that sticks out?
They love willow, aspen, and cottonwood, and they hate the sound of running water.
Okay. Hi, Auden.
How do predators actually get the beaver?
Good question. Thank you, Auden.
that's a great question. So if you poke around on the internet and look at beaver dams and predators, you will find that there are predators that will actually hang out on beaver dams or beaver lodges and just wait. And also remember that beavers are pretty awkward on land, and when they have to cross land to get to their food resources or to their building materials, they're super vulnerable. They're better off when they're in the water, but on land is when a lot of predation happens.
Thanks, Auden. Okay, who else? Yes.
Do nutria accomplish some of the same things that beaver do?
That was a no.
Nutria are non-native to this area, and they cause a lot of damage because they burrow in banks and cause banks to collapse. They do not build dams, and they are not nearly as cool as beavers.
Is it true that the beaver has to wear its teeth down, or the teeth will grow in a dangerous way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So beavers actually naturally wear their teeth down in the process of chomping on their wood, whether it's for food or to cut trees for their building material, for their dams. What sometimes happens is if a beaver's tooth kind of goes awry and it's not in line, it can actually do gruesome things like end up puncturing its skull. So that has happened before, but I think it's kind of more of an aberration than a normal thing. So normally they wear their teeth down by all the stuff that they do, by all the gnawing.
Okay, I want to do a couple more. Anyone over here? I don't want to ignore this side. Yes, you are.
I've seen a lot of beavers over by, what is it, the lake in Dallsport, Spearfish Lake, crossing the road. I've seen a few of them that have been hit by cars. I know they chewed down my favorite willow trees at Hess Park. Do you know if those beavers have been relocated? Because I haven't seen them for a while. Or did they all die?
Yes, we know those beavers and are familiar with that situation. In fact, one of our slides had a photo of the sign that says beware of the banks because of those beavers. But so the Army Corps manages that park, and they have done a bunch of replanting, and they have wrapped the trees to prevent them from being felled by beavers. We had hoped that we could actually relocate those beavers. And so we set up trail cameras, and we were really monitoring the situation, and then poof, disappeared. So we're not sure if the beaver was predated. We think probably that was the case. And also there's a big railroad track between it and the Columbia River. So if it took off, who knows? There's a long overland trek that it probably didn't make when it ran out of food. Sorry about your willow.
Okay, we're going to do one more question. I'm going to go way up in the back here, and then they will stick around a little bit afterwards for you guys to chat with. Okay, no pressure.
So one question, one comment. So yeah, I know you're trying to figure out the population, and so what's the most high technology that you can figure out what's going on? Chip everybody and then where they are, or what are you going to do?
So the state of Washington, at any rate, has been hearing a lot from the Beaver Working Group and other groups that a population study is really necessary, and so they're looking at ways that they could do that. We only know that none have been done yet, but I think there's some thinking going on about, like, okay, how would you go about doing that? It may involve enlisting some research institutions. It may involve remote sensing. There are things you can do. Environmental DNA is another way that you could potentially figure out presence, absence, but that won't give you numbers necessarily. Right. So it's complicated, right?
I just had one more.
Or it's
comment.
Complex, I should
Yeah.
say.
You
We're talking about
cheated. You
beavers.
cheated
It's
on me
complex.
here. You better make it a quick comment.
No, I was just a month ago, or even less than a month. There's a large beaver right by the spit.
We knew this would come up.
But it was like, and it's dead. It was fresh and big, and there wasn't
Yeah.
anything wrong with it. I don't know if it was hit by a boat or what. I mean, I don't.
So I asked
Thank
about
you.
this because we simultaneously heard about another dead beaver, and at least in Washington State, they are asking us, at least when we find a dead beaver, to send it to the state veterinarian. There are diseases like tularemia that can kill. It's a bacterial disease that can kill beavers. So it's possible, if there were no signs of foul play, that it died by something like that.
On that uplifting note, I'm going to give you guys a little sneak peek, and then all of you who are part of the surprise should start acting. Okay, you guys. Okay. Hopefully Dennis is here somewhere. He's kind of our key guy. While they set up for what we're calling, I haven't checked it out, but we're going to call it the Beaver State premiere of a song written by a true beaver lover, Ken Bevis. The song is called Gotta Chew, and y'all are going to be backup singers, okay? So get ready. You guys have a slide, I think, with lyrics. Okay, while they set up, I want to thank my very incredible Sense of Place team, Etta, who you met out front, Kyle, our photo ninja here. What should I do, like a beaver thing? Okay, we always got to do a pose. Joe, you guys handled a lot tonight. Joe is with Big Britches Productions. They do plays in the Gorge. Let me see. I want to tell you that next month, December 13th, we have a presentation on native plants, and I'm very excited. There's surprises, you guys. I've always have surprises. There's surprises for that one. December 13th. This will go to the archive, so if you want to share with friends, we'll get it up there pretty soon. I want to let you know that November 27th is the Beaver Moon. I'd love to tell you I planned this, but I didn't. And I want to give a huge thank you. Right now, we'll clap for you now because I don't know what's going to happen once Dennis gets going. I want to give a huge thank you to you, Margaret, and you, Jeanette, for helping tell the story of the Beavers. Thank you so much. Thank you. You look like you had something to say, Margaret. Ken Bevis. I said Ken Bevis. We were going to say Ken Bevis wrote this song. And we're going to play Gotta Chew, but not quite yet. Hold on. Because in true ecosystem, we're all connected. We rely on each other fashion. I learned about this song about a week ago. And as Jeanette and Margaret have learned, if you plant a silly seed in me, I will make it grow. And so I needed to find a musician who was willing to sing a song about beavers. And a great thing about the Gorge is the people are here who will do that. And so Dennis Castneris, who is also known to many of you as Alonzo Garbanzo, is here to sing for us. On drums, we have percussion. I don't know how to say it. Percussion is Andy Lade, another local musician. We have Dave Ryan with the Mount Adams Resource Stewards, also part of the Wish Push group. Tova Tillinghast, a local musician and part of the Underwood Conservation District, and also part of the Wish Push group. I also think what's really cool is that Andy works for Interfluve, which is a sponsor of Sense of Place, and Dennis's family is part of the Salvador Fund, which has funded multiple things for Sense of Place in the past, so we could do bilingual presentations. So as far as like ecosystem happiness, this makes me so happy. The one last piece of the ecosystem is that I literally, I think yesterday, was looking for someone to help sponsor because I really want to pay musicians for the work that they're doing. And so I reached out to one of my favorite shops in the Gorge. And obviously, if you're gonna try to get someone to pay for a song about beavers, it makes sense to reach out to a shop called Twigs. And the owner, Nicole, and also the store manager, Katie, they were very lovely. They said, yes, we would, but there is one catch. And I'm going to read it to you because I don't want to mess it up because then we won't get the money. Owner Nicole said, I quote, "This donation requires a contract for Sarah to sign that says she will announce the following. This was a reluctant donation as Nicole is a diehard Duck fan." Go Ducks! So, with that, don't be shy. This is the chorus. You'll figure it out. Be brave like a beaver. Got It Chew, written by Ken Bevis, performed by this bevy of amazing people. And you guys need to get up to the microphone. Tova, get up there. All right, take it away. Gotta chew, gotta chew, choo, choo. Gotta chew, gotta chew, gotta chew, choo, choo. 'Cause I'm a beaver.
I'm the best damn builder in the world. Give me some willow and some cottonwood. Little bit of aspen, that'll be good. Throw in some mud and Lord,
I'll build you a dam.
slap, slap. Well, I'm a big old beaver and I'm able. Oh, I will raise your water table. Make a home for the ducks and the toads. Plug your coal barn, block all your roads. Yeah, I gotta chew,
Gotta chew, gotta chew, choo, choo. Gotta chew, gotta chew, gotta chew, choo, choo.
'cause I'm a beaver. Best damn builder in the world. Give me a willow and some cottonwood. A little bit of aspen, that'll be good. Throw in some mud, Lord, I'll build you a dam. Slap, slap. I'm a big old beaver, I work through the night. Save me the water, 'cause I don't like to fight. I'm here with my family in a snug little hut. I'm a keystone species. You know what? You know what? I gotta chew, gotta chew, gotta chew, chew, chew. Gotta chew, gotta chew, gotta chew, chew, chew. 'Cause I'm a beaver, best damn builder in the world.
Yeah!
Give me your willow and some cottonwood. Little bit of aspen, that would be good. Throw some mud and Lord, I'll build you a dam. Slap, slap. I gotta chew, gotta chew, gotta chew, chew, chew.
Here's your chance.
Gotta chew, chew, chew. I'm a beaver,
Come on.
best damn builder in the world. Give me your willow and some cottonwood. Little bit of aspen, that would be good. Throw in some mud and Lord, I'll build you a dam. 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 Slap, slap.
Woo! Thank you all! Thank you so much! Thank you, Dennis! Thank you so much! Go, Beaver Believers!
Build you a dam.